I'm Madison and welcome back to my channel. Today I have my best romance duets to recommend for you. So over the last couple of years, I've read a bunch of romance duets, and there are some that I think super stand out to me that I want to recommend for you guys, because I find that sometimes romance duets can be hit or miss. Sometimes you read the first book and are like, oh, I don't want to move on to the second one, I didn't like it enough. Or you read the first one, love it, read the second one, and the second one's like a letdown. So today I've curated some for you that I think you 100% need to read. So without further ado, let's get into it. So first things first, you know what? I don't even know what order I want to go in for this. They're all amazing. Maybe I'll start off with my most recent favorite duet that I have read. That is the Losers Duet by Harley LaRue. This is two books, obviously. I don't know. These are all two books. They're a duet. Madison. But they're both quite big. You know, that's just life. As you can see, though, I tapped the absolute crap out of this book because it is that amazing. And if you're someone who's a fan of dark romances, of super, super kinky romances, this is 100% going to be a book that you will want to check out. The Losers Duet is a polyamorous romance. You're following Jessica, and back in high school, she was like the popular queen bee. She and her boyfriend used to bully these 4 guys in school, and those were Manson, Jason, Lucas, and Vincent. So there is a novella that does take place before this duet called The Dare, and The Dare takes place during Halloween, during college, where Jessica ends up playing basically like a game of like beer pong with Manson, and she ends up losing the game, and she ends up becoming Manson submissive for the night as a result of losing beer pong. And then this takes place after college, when Jessica has just returned back to town. She's there doing like a remote internship while she tries to land a full-time job. She's living with her extremely toxic mother, and one day she's driving her car and the battery dies, the entire car just dies, and Manson's there to help her, and he says, hey, you know what, actually I have an auto mechanic shop, I can fix your car for you. She says great, except for the fact that she actually can't afford to fix the car. So Manson says, okay, let me enter a deal with you. The deal is that I will fix your car for free. In return, you will become our submissive for 4 months. Well, for however long it takes to fix the car. And she says yes, because she actually wants to become their submissive. She's just too afraid to admit that she wants to, because she is still holding on to her popular queen bee reputation, and she still thinks of them as below her. So she doesn't want to admit that she wants to be with them. And kind of what this is about, the first book at least, is Jessica kind of coming into her own and being able to let go of this reputation, this image of herself that she's had to fake and pretend to be for so long. And this really gives her a chance, and with being with the guys, to kind of become her true self, and especially to explore her true self through being in a dom-sub relationship with these guys, and also just all the different kinks and stuff that come out of it. It's a super, super like very kink positive series, and it's one of the things that really stands out to me about that is how, you know, sex and sexual relationships can really help you kind of not only explore yourself sexually, but also just explore yourself in life in general, which I think is a super positive message, and I'm always looking for positive sexual messages. That being said, there's a lot of different kinks in this book. It is not going to be for everyone. It does get quite dark at times. There is like C&C, there is, you know, primal play, there is blood play, there's scarification and things like that, so do know about those kind of things. One of my favorite things though, there's electrostimulation in this, if I'm correct. This is the one with electrostimulation where he actually like electrocutes her hoo-ha. That was a new one. But one of the things I did not mention, I forget to mention, that happens in this book, there is a sexy gaming scene. There's a sexy gaming scene, and I always forget to mention that. It is one of my favorite scenes that I read. She's literally there playing with them all online, and like on like basically like a Discord server, and like, oh my god, it's really good. It's really good, trust me. Oh my god, it stood out to me. This book also does have pet play, but not the kind of pet play that you think exists, and I was actually kind of surprised by the pet play. So FYI, love this duet. Then we have, I'm just gonna continue to get darker and darker, I actually just realized, with all of these. I'll get lighter towards the end, but let's just continue on a downward darkness trajectory. We then have There Are No Saints by Sophie Lark. This is the Sinners duet. This is a serial killer duet, which is super fun. We love serial killers in this household. that can be taken so out of context. You have got Mara and you have got Cole. Cole Blackwell is a famous billionaire artist. At the same time, he is also a infamous serial killer. And Cole actually has a rival, and that is Alistair. Now, Alistair is not only Cole's rival in the art world, they're both rival artists, and Mara is this starving artist, okay? And one day, Mara kind of ends up getting thrown in Cole's path, basically. And he ends up allowing her to survive and not killing her, and as a result, he actually ends up forming a obsession with her, and he ends up actually taking her under his wing as like one of his proteges in the art world. But because he becomes so obsessed with her, Alistair, his rival, then sets his sights on Mara as someone that he wants to kill, and at the same time, Cole is like, do I kill her before he gets a chance to kill her? Or do I try and save her from being killed at all? Like, where am I standing with this? It is really awesome. I really love like the whole kind of morally great aspect to both of our characters and kind of just how unhinged it gets between the two of them. Do know that it does start off with quite some like pretty gruesome scenes when Mara kind of gets like kidnapped to an extent and some shit that she goes down. It's very like descriptive. And there's also like hella voyeurism in this. I like a bit of voyeurism in my books. This, even at times, I was like, wow, that's like, there were a couple scenes in this I was like, that is a lot of voyeurism, okay? So do know that going into it, it is definitely on that very, very dark, kinky side, but it's also super fun at the same time, and I just love how their obsessive romance keeps on progressive, and it's such an interesting and beautifully written book. Like, Sophie did such an amazing job with this one, and it's just like one of the best like serial killer duets you will read. I had a field day with it, so yes. Anyone who knows me knew this was coming next. Haunting Adeline, book 1 of the Cat and Mouse duet by H.D. Carlton. One of my favorite books of 2022 as well. Like I said, we're just getting darker and darker. This is a stalker romance. It is honestly one of my all-time favorites. It is such a beautiful book. I read it on my Kindle, so I actually haven't gone through and tabbed my edition yet, but I will be doing that eventually. I will be going through and tabbing this just because it is so freaking phenomenal and I am so utterly obsessed with it. And Zaid and Addie's romance was one that is just so phenomenal to watch as it progresses, and it's one of the most like hauntingly beautiful things you will read in your entire life if you are able to like be okay with the triggers that are in this book. Now, the triggers that are in this book is the fact that the first book does have dubious consent and CNC in it, and the second book in this does have on-page rape and sexual assault, not between the two characters themselves, but of other characters on them, if that makes sense. Anyway, like I said, this duet follows Zaid and Addie. Addie is an independent romance author. She has just moved back to her hometown. She's living in her grandmother's house. She's living her life. Then you have got Zaid. Zaid is the head of an anonymous hacker organization that tracks down and dismantles bad people who basically traffic women and children, who like, you know, human trafficking. At the same time, he comes across Addie one day and becomes obsessed with her and starts to stalk her, and it is their romance. It is amazing. It definitely is like quite shocking in the beginning, but watching their romance progress is really interesting because they kind of start off as like a very like lust driven kind of romance, and then their romance kind of really deepens into like a really serious like friendship that I adore. And I love this. I was so hesitant to read this at the beginning because I thought that this was like maybe going to be overhyped because everyone that I know has read this, or I thought, wow, everyone says it's like the darkest book they've ever read, like will it be too dark for me? It really wasn't. I've definitely read things that are way more effed up than this. I feel like I talk about this all the time, like I feel like I don't want to like beat a dead horse like talking about this book, quite honestly, but I really do freaking adore it. And if you are a fan of dark romances and actually haven't read this yet, I don't know what you're doing. It is like the like like this is the quintessential dark romance. Okay, now we're gonna get to the most unhinged book on this list, and then we're gonna start going back up, okay? So the most unhinged book I have on this list is The Devil's Playground duet by Ashley Jade. This is literally unhinged. I can't even actually explain to you what this duet is about. They're both super short books. They're like less than 200 pages each. Any extreme kink you can think of will happen in this duet. Any kind of tabooness that you can imagine will happen in this duet. Any sort of forbidden things, anything that's just a bit too far, happens in this duet. Now, I went into this duet completely blind, and it actually, at the very beginning of this book, it actually says, this book is a prelude and it is best that you go in blind. So this book is, yeah, it is technically a prelude, like this is like a prequel to the next one. So it is a duet, but this kind of like sets up for the second book in the duet. So this takes place mostly in the past and the second book takes place in the present. This first book actually focuses more on a MM relationship and the second book focuses more on a MF relationship. So I really don't want to spoil everything because it is just so nuts to go into it. But basically, if you don't have any trigger warnings, read this duet. If you do, go into it lightly. There's no like, oh, if I remember, I'm like 90% sure that there is no triggers in this for, there's no triggers in this when it comes to like suicide, self-harm, or pedophilia. I'm pretty sure. So I can at least tell you that. Everything else is kind of on the table, and yes, there is peeing. Anyway, let's go make this a little more fun, okay? Next we have Lola and the Millionaires. This is book 1 in the Millionaires duet. I'm calling it the Millionaires duet, it's just the Lola and the Millionaires duet. This is Omegaverse, and you guys know I am a hoe for Omegaverse. Omegaverse is my bread and butter. If you don't know what Omegaverse is, I have a whole video here on my channel explaining Omegaverse. It is cringy, but amazing at the same time. Lola and Millionaires follows Lola. She is a beta who has been quite traumatized in the past by alphas. To an extent, she has a lot of sexual assault PTSD from how she was treated in the past from alphas, to the extent that she kind of has become a recluse in a homebody until the start of this book begins, in which she has finally, you know, kind of healed enough to kind of go back out into society, and she's just started a new job. And the night before she goes to her new job, she ends up going to the bars, and she goes to this beta bar, and she ends up meeting this guy there that she instantly hits it off with, who's another beta, and she really wants to be with him, but then she ends up finding out after her one night stand with him that he is actually in a pack with some alphas, and she's like, I can't do that. Goes to her job the next day, meets these alphas that are part of her job, and lo and behold, not only is she A, attracted to them, but B, they are the alphas that are part of that beta's pack. So it is kind of her romance with this pack who has these like 3 or 4 alphas, this beta and an omega, all of them are guys, and kind of how she has a relationship with them and how she kind of heals from her past trauma. At the same time, there is also a mystery throughout the duet about like the guy who caused her past trauma. He kind of like is on the run currently, and like he's kind of like coming back to come get her. I love this. I just want to say that after her one night stand with that beta guy, the next morning he goes to go make her breakfast, but she has nothing in her apartment because she's like poor AF. So he actually, because they're all millionaires, all the guys, he like go puffs a waffle maker and like waffle ingredients and makes her waffles in her apartment. I'm like, bruh, could you imagine that, being like, oh, I don't really have anything to cook breakfast in my apartment, and then wake up the next morning to the guy being like, so I went to like, you know, Home Goods and went and bought all this shit for your place so that we can have a nice breakfast after. I'm like, bruh, goals. The omega in the book is like, oh, you need new clothes after your apartment was trashed? I bought you all this. Man, I love millionaires. They're the best things to read about. Oh my god, it's always so much fun. And that is it for my favorite romance duets. Let me know down below what some of your favorites are. And if you did enjoy this video, please hit the like button. If you want to see more of me, please go to my channel, and don't forget to check me out over on TikTok and Instagram. And until next time, thanks so much everyone. Bye-bye.